Committee of the new academic year, and hopefully you all had a nice summer break. Nice to see you all again. I'll start with the usual first couple of items on the agenda. Apologies for absence. Councillor Buchanan.
Apologies from Councillor Merrick.
Thank you. Is there any?
Sorry, I've got apologies from Councillor O'Donnell and from Dorothy Graham.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Leslie Ann. Okay, and moving on to the next item, the usual declarations of interest. Anything? No? Great, thank you. And okay, our next item on the agenda, I'm delighted to say that we have a couple of our teachers with us and to talk to us. I think Mark going to introduce them, and it's a spotlight on leadership. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Convener. Education Committee will recall in 2024 the department's revised leadership strategy was presented to committee for approval. Members will be aware from the papers presented by Ms Collins today the department's endeavours to deliver on the ambitious aim to improve outcomes for all learners while seeking to close the poverty-related attainment gap. And key to the realisation of this ambition is the requirement to build system and leadership capacity. The revised leadership strategy provides appropriate action planning which sets out our departmental expectations to continue to develop a culture of leadership which is value-based and has the aspirations of our learners at the heart of everything we do. In addition, we set out a number of key performance indicators. As part of our approach to monitoring the impact of our leadership strategy is the establishment and evaluation of a number of our leadership programmes for staff, such as our Head Teacher Induction Programme, Middle Leaders Induction Programme and Probationers Programme, and our Aspiring Leadership Programme. The development and launch of an Aspiring Leaders Programme with the aim of supporting and creating confident senior leaders ready to embark on headship is a critical indicator of the impact of the activities of the department. In delivering on its strategy, committee will be aware that this commitment aligns with the Council's people vision, namely the development of inspirational and effective leaders at all levels and an engaged and empowered workforce. So our spotlight session today will provide a personal narrative on the effectiveness of the Aspiring Leaders Programme. We'll hear from two participants of the programme, Ben Harrison, who is Deputy Head Teacher at Mearns Castle High School, who was one of the first participants to embark on the Aspiring Leaders Programme in 22-23. And we'll also hear from Julie Neal, a Deputy Head Teacher at St Mark's Primary School, who attended the second cohort of the Aspiring Leaders Programme. Both Ben and Julie, after completing the Aspiring Leaders Programme, embarked on the National Inter-Headship course, and both completed it successfully earlier this year. Contemporary research in education identifies inspirational leadership as the foundation upon which world-class teaching and learning is built. So it gives me pleasure to introduce the two leaders who'll give an insight of the impact of their learning as a result of attending the Aspiring Leaders Programme.
Hello, good morning everyone. As Mark said, my name is Ben Harrison and I'm a Deputy Head Teacher at Mearns Castle High School. And I've held the role of Deputy Head Teacher in East Renfrewshire for 5 years now. So I completed the Aspiring Leaders course in the Authority in session 22-23, and I found the timing of the course, the timing of my participation in the course, to be ideal for me both personally and professionally. By that point, I was confident in the operational side of my role. We'd done a lot of that coming out of COVID and how to manage structures in the school, but I felt I had more to offer in terms of shaping the strategic vision of the school and also in challenging colleagues to improve experiences and outcomes for our young people year on year. So over the next few minutes, I'll share some of the key strengths of the programme from my point of view, how it's impacted me and my practice, particularly in reflecting on my own values, but also how the programme began to shape an idea in my head of the type of head teacher I might like to become in the future. So from the outset of the programme, I was challenged to consider my leadership through a 360 feedback assessment. So that meant a range of colleagues were asked to rate and comment on my skills, effectiveness and influence. Now, giving people the opportunity to anonymously rate your effectiveness is undoubtedly a daunting prospect, but it did set the tone perfectly for a year of honest and rigorous self-reflection. My perceptions were challenged in a range of ways, and I came to really value that professional criticality as it developed. So when the programme began in earnest, participants were brought together regularly to hear from senior colleagues across the authority and across sectors. And those colleagues shared how they led on various aspects of school improvement, from parental engagement all the way through to developing a brand new school mission, vision and values. And it was striking for all of us to see such a variety of leadership approaches succeeding in our schools. But the common thread, which was clear, was that all of the head teachers really knew their school communities, and they focused on the priorities that served their young people's best. So one session in particular, which had a lasting impact on me, was delivered by Brian McLaughlin, who's the head teacher at Carrollside Primary. And Brian spoke about the importance of prioritising well-being and modelling healthier working practices to colleagues. Brian explained in forensic detail how he had taken steps to build a positive culture within his team. He had an immediate impact on how I viewed leadership, and as a result, the kind of colleague I aspired to be changed. In the days and weeks following Brian's session, I found myself referring back to my notes regularly, and I even paraphrased and quoted him several times in senior leadership meetings in my own school. Hearing from such a wide range of senior leaders in this forum naturally led me to reflect on my own practice and values in a new way and in a new framework. And this reflection was complemented really well by a selection of directed reading throughout the course, which I found really helped me interrogate what mattered to me as a senior leader. Throughout the year, opportunities arose to build peer relationships with colleagues who were at a similar stage in their leadership journeys, and our in-person sessions more and more throughout the year offered space in which practice could be shared and ideas could be challenged. Many of these relationships have continued to be a valued part of my support network long beyond the conclusion of the programme. And in particular, I found that being paired with an experienced head teacher mentor was one of the most impactful parts of the course for me. Those regular coaching conversations offered fresh external perspective on issues that may arise in my own context. My mentor often challenged my thinking, and that honest dialogue helped me develop and grow as a leader. And given how precious we all know head teachers' time often is, this provision in particular made me feel genuinely valued as a leader in East Renfrewshire. So all of those strands, the head teacher inputs, the 360-degree feedback, the peer network, the professional reading, and my head teacher mentor created the optimal conditions for me to clarify the values underpinning my leadership. Throughout the year, I gained a deeper understanding of my influence within the school, and I was able to begin envisioning the kind of head teacher I might want to become in the future. And following the conclusion of the Aspiring Leaders programme, I successfully applied for the 23-24 cohort of Into Headship the following year at Strathclyde University. And in my interview for this programme, I was asked about the values which were important to me in my leadership practice. And now, had I not participated in the Aspiring Leaders programme the year before, I think I might have been a little bit lost in being able to describe that. However, I was able to talk in detail about my reflections on the importance of honesty and integrity in my practice, and how I've learned that professional trust can be increased even when difficult messages have had to be delivered. I also talked about having clear and unashamed ambition in wanting the very best for all of the learners in our school, and that meant pursuing both excellent attainment and excellent experiences for every young person with whom we come into contact. So I can say with confidence that the Aspiring Leaders programme was not just excellent preparation, but for me it was necessary. It laid a foundation of criticality and self-reflection that meant I was able to engage completely with the demands of the Into Headship course, which I completed last summer. I'm now really looking forward to volunteering as a mentor in the forthcoming Middle Leaders programme in East Renfrewshire, and having been so well supported myself, I'm really looking forward to contributing something towards the development of colleagues in their own leadership journeys. So thanks very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Julie Neal. I'm Deputy Head at St Mark's Primary School and have been for the past 5 years. Like Ben, I'm here today to share how the Aspiring Leaders course has strengthened my leadership skills, but most importantly, how it's helped to improve outcomes for children and staff at St Mark's Primary. I've worked for East Renfrewshire Council since my probationary year in 2005, and I've been fortunate enough to take part in a wide range of professional learning opportunities. However, I feel that this course had the single greatest impact on me as a leader, both professionally and personally. When I joined the course, along with Ben, I was in the position where I'd just completed my first year as Deputy Head Teacher, and the timing was perfect for me. It helped me to understand different leadership styles and the demands of leading sustainable strategic change. Before the course, leadership for me often meant leading from the front, sharing my expertise, guiding colleagues step by step. And while that approach brought credibility and supported less experienced staff, I realised that it didn't always empower others to develop their own leadership skills, meaning that some improvements were only really sustainable while I was actively supporting and driving them. The professional reading, discussion and reflection in the course helped me to learn to focus on recognising colleagues' strengths, developing their capacity and fostering a culture where improvement belongs to everyone. As Munby puts it, the best leaders are aware of their strengths and weaknesses and don't try to be perfect at everything, and that was really important for me to learn. A strength of the course was its emphasis on values and relationships. And whilst my teaching career has always been underpinned by my faith in the professional values of trust and respect, social justice and integrity, I wasn't always explicit about how these had shaped my decisions and actions. Now, when we embark on change, I clearly connect it to our shared values and purpose. Staff are given time to read key policies and literature, discuss their relevance, and reflect on what they mean for our school. This investment in staff development has improved attitudes to change, strengthened our classroom practice, and contributed to our improved attainment in recent years. Furthermore, the course has taught me the importance of taking time for myself to reflect on my professional practice and leadership of others. As such, I'm a much more self-aware and confident leader, and I'm more confident in being a values-based leader who's not afraid to challenge. Together with my head teacher, this ensures that every child in St Mark's Primary experiences a curriculum that is rigorous and relevant and prepares them to be successful, active members of their community now and in the future. Another benefit of the course is that it has expanded my professional network across the authority. Sharing experiences with colleagues like Ben and others in similar roles not only improved my practice, but it provided valuable peer support, which has had a positive impact on my well-being as well as my professional development. Importantly, the Aspiring Leaders course gave me the confidence and preparation I needed to begin the Into-Headship programme last year. It allowed me to step into that next level of leadership learning feeling ready rather than daunted. The professional learning sessions in the Aspiring Leaders course and the literature that we engaged with provided a strong foundation for the demands of Into-Headship. In fact, I often referred back to them when completing assignments. Perhaps most significantly, it's given me the belief that I could successfully lead a school as a head teacher in the future, something that I might not have felt ready to consider without the skills, insight and encouragement gained from this course. It's not only prepared me for the next stage of leadership, it's also shaped the kind of head teacher I want to be. I want to be a leader whose decisions are rooted in strong values, with trust and respect, integrity and social justice at the heart of everything I do. A head teacher who places relationships and collaboration at the centre, who knows the school's context well, and who puts the well-being of the whole school community at the heart of every decision. One particular session that inspired me was also the one led by Brian McLachlan from Carrollside, who spoke about modelling well-being. And his message was clear that as a head teacher, you don't need to be the first in the door and the last out at night. Instead, you model balance and self-care because that allows the whole community to thrive. I want to lead a school community where everyone feels valued and cared for. I want to be a head teacher who listens and coaches, who guides and supports colleagues to lead, encourages them to develop their own skills and expertise. So in short, the Aspiring Leaders course has helped me to become that more authentic, effective leader. It strengthened our school culture, improved teaching and learning, and prepared me for future leadership opportunities. I believe that it's a powerful example of how investing in leadership and development benefits not just the individual educator, but our schools, our children and our communities. Thank you.
Thank you both. That was excellent and a great insight into the programme that you've been through, and it's very interesting and it's excellent just to hear what you're quite inspired, obviously, and you have a vision maybe of the future and the head teacher that you may well be, hopefully one day. I'll ask if there's any questions or comments that the members of the committee. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, convener. Quite often, I do a wee bit of teaching. I'm contracted for 4.5 hours a week at City of Glasgow College, and as part of that huge remit, I teach apprentices, and always say to them that stage from the hardest stage you'll ever find is going from the shop floor up to, say, a supervisory or charge hand position, because you've been pally with everybody and all of a sudden you're responsible for them. So, where am I getting at with this? Yeah, quite clearly, you'll have been in a situation, you've been teachers, you've been learning your practice and all the rest of it, and all of a sudden, I quite fancy the idea of being in a leadership role. So, having taken that step, now, clearly, you got into that position. Did you recognise kind of straight away, I need some guidance here? What I'm trying to get at, have you always had that support within the department in order to develop, and what was it that initiated you to take this even greater step in learning your skills? Thanks.
Thanks for the question, and I've actually been having a very similar conversation with a colleague who's recently stepped up from a class teacher role into a more senior role, about how he might find it difficult that he's gone from every pupil in his class thinking he's great to actually some pupils might have some issues with things that you need to now do. Yeah, absolutely. In my first experience of stepping into a principal teacher role in Williamwood High School a number of years ago, I certainly needed the support. I needed the support of colleagues around me, of senior leaders at the time, and of my line manager at the time to help me navigate that change in role in the school, as pupils saw me and as other staff saw me. And to make sure that as far as possible we navigated that change correctly. And I remember well the advice I was given at that time, and it was about that integrity and honesty, and look, not everyone's going to like what you're going to have to say, but you need to know that you're doing it for the right reasons. And moving into the Aspiring Leaders programme, you know, you start to really think about some of those things, and both Julie and I have said, obviously, the timing was right for us. I don't think I knew that I needed to meet colleagues from across the authority and really think about values-based practice and think about what really drives and underpins the leadership that happens in schools day to day, until I was in it and until it was happening and we were having those high-level discussions. But it's something that the more it's happening in East Renfrewshire, it's feeding back into senior leadership teams across the school, and we're gaining an increased understanding of how that can benefit the whole school community.
I agree with what Ben was saying. I think for me, I was in a school for 15 years and went from probationary teacher to, was the class teacher, and then taking on leadership roles within the school, and then principal teacher. I think one of the strengths of East Renfrewshire is there's so many opportunities to lead at every stage of your career. I wasn't long out of my probation when I was having opportunities to lead things that I was interested in. And people then, developing that expertise and working with people and developing your credibility helps you to be more confident and, leading others, but also the values. If you're really clear on what your values are and you understand the underlying purpose of what you're doing, it's much easier to lead, and it's easier to give people maybe difficult messages. And I firmly believe that communication's key, that we have to communicate clearly, and if staff appreciate what you're saying and they know that where it's coming, that you understand, you're not making decisions just off the top of your head. It's very clear that you've thought about it. You do find it easier, but I think across the authority we have really good structures in place where you can reach out for support, whether it be within your schools or the Aspiring Leaders programme, as we both said, gave us that wider network at colleagues at our own level, but also helped to build relationships with some of the senior leadership team in the local authority, like, for example, Tracy Morton and things like that, where you felt you had other people you could reach out to if you needed advice and support.
Thanks very much. Julie, you mentioned, you said not to be afraid to challenge. Does that go up the way as well?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that you know, I having worked with a variety of head teachers, I've always felt that they were willing to listen to when I had maybe something I didn't, not challenging a kind of aggressive way or trying to be awkward, but if you've done particular learning, for example, I was very interested in maths, and I'd done a lot of reading into mathematical mindsets and Joe Bowler and things like that. And when I was involved in developing the skills framework for the authority, you know, being able to say, well, from my learning, here's what I think, and some leaders in the school maybe had a different idea or a different approach. And it's about that respect, and relationships are key, because I think if you've got really good relationships and that are built on respect, you can challenge each other. And sometimes, you know, being in the leadership position now, sometimes there's a decision that has to be made, even though it might not be the popular one. But the communication's the key there, I think, and across the authority, I believe that, you know, from my experiences of presenting to some of the educational leadership team, they do listen and they will appreciate that maybe something that's right for one context isn't right for another, and we can say that. But obviously we're all subject to things that are coming from slightly higher, you know, government level, and we have to look at it and take on board what's right for our children.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Councillor Fragnall.
Thanks. It's clear the impact these courses have had on you. How often did the course actually meet, and how often were you one-to-one with your mentors? And how has your leadership style changed and developed as a result of the course? I know that's quite a big question. And I know, Ben, I knew you when you were at Williamwood as a pupil, so it's been quite interesting to see your journey just from an outsider. And I know the impact you've had on many young people, that the encouragement for them to apply for university courses that they maybe wouldn't have applied for. And so I think there is a real impact in your leadership, just even as a classroom teacher. So it's been interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for sharing that. Yeah, so the sessions were run about once every 6 to 8 weeks. We were talking recently with Tracy Morton and David Gordon about that, because when you cast your mind back to it, you say, well, that's right, we were still social distancing at that point. It was in the Williamwood conference room and we were all 2 metres apart, and you forget about that aspect of it. But they were in-person sessions, and there was a real value ascribed to that we were able to do that we were able to come into the room together, because then you do have those informal conversations before meetings start and afterwards. In terms of the head teacher mentor, how frequent were those meetings? I think that depended on colleagues and how often they chose to meet. In my own experience, I would meet with Stuart Clark, who was the head teacher at Mearns Castle at the time, around about the same kind of time frame, about once every 6 weeks. For me, it was highly valuable that continued beyond the end of the programme. I certainly found it valuable. I think Stuart must have found it somewhat valuable when he agreed to keep meeting with me for coffees every 6 weeks. But it's now that we work together, he doesn't meet with me anymore outside work. It's worth saying. But yeah, that depended on individual relationships between staff and their head teacher mentors. So I think that for everyone had a different impact, or found a different impact from different aspects of the programme. As you say, in the school in Williamwood where I was working when I completed the programme, I felt that I did enjoy a high profile with staff. I felt that I did have influence in the school, although I maybe wouldn't have seen that or described it in that way at that time. And I was keen to interrogate ways in which I could increase the impact on the outcomes for young people. But it became more than that. It became more about actually really evaluating, well, just because my opinion is that I have influence and I'm having an impact on young people, that doesn't mean that would be the view of all staff across all departments, and is there more that can be done. And Julie talked about that school improvement being everyone's to own, and that certainly became more a part of my thinking as I completed the programme, and certainly I've taken that to Mearns Castle with me as a central kind of tenet of my leadership.
I think for me, I touched on that. I was very much a leader who, it's in my nature. I get things done. I didn't. My 360 said that delegation was probably something that I could do better, and people recognised that a lot of what I did was from a good place. I was wanting to be helpful. I was trying to support them. But it can disempower people, and also it's not sustainable as a leader as you make that step up, particularly from principal teacher to deputy. There's so much more, and if you're caught up in the day-to-day operational things, then it's difficult to be strategic, and it then puts the school in a position where if you're not actively leading it, how do you ensure that continues? And the course and the learning I've done subsequently, I believe, has really changed that. And now, lots of the things that we've put in place, one of the first things we did when I was doing the Aspiring Leaders course, or the way we teach reading, was very much more a kind of collaborative approach. It wasn't about me being the one leading and driving it. And it's something that I know is just really embedded within the school and has had a positive impact. So for me, much as I'm still someone that likes to get in there and get things done, I'm much more self-aware as well, and I can reflect on, is that the right decision for that time? Sometimes you need to, but most of the time it's better to support the staff to develop their own skills. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Paxman. Councillor Buchanan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Ben, Julie, for the presentation this morning, because I think what it does is it highlights the positive aspects of the paper, but in the very physical way that you've taken on the challenges, not just for yourselves and the skills that you have learned and grown into, but I think what is clear is that you both touched on that as much as you're doing the course and you're learning the new skill set, the priority is the outcomes for our children and young people, and how you then impart that information to your colleagues to ensure that we get those outcomes. I think the recognition that you've touched on, particularly the collaborative aspect of working with other bodies, it's not just within our schools, it's working with DYW, it's working with all of the services that operate through our educational system and health systems and wellbeing systems to get those outcomes. And I think that's highlighted in the issues that you've just touched upon and discussed. And that, for me, highlights why we have our process, if you like, across East Renfrewshire of continuous improvement as to why that works, because we continually work to deliver the best and get the best outcomes and prioritise our children and young people. It's not so much a concern, and it's maybe a question for Mark, as I know that nationally there's the development of a centre for teaching excellence. Now, clearly this is an example of teaching excellence, if you like, and the outcomes that can have. Do we see how that's going to feed in to that national process that will operate through Glasgow University? Because I would see that this should, if you like, be a critical factor, as in, here's what we're doing here, how can that be looked at on a wider national basis to help deliver some of the issues that yourselves are experiencing and talking about, and what we see as the reality of the outcomes across our education department?
Thanks, Councillor Buchanan. Yeah, just to pick up the Centre for Teaching Excellence, my understanding is it's launching, I think, even next week. It's probably, or the week after, yeah, it's probably fair to say that at this stage we still need some more detail. We have been engaging with the team that have set that up, both at an individual local authority level, but also through the West Partnership. So they attended one of our board meetings to speak about their approaches. As you highlighted, for me, it will be really important that that offer, that support for teachers, which is vital in terms of that sort of development that both Ben and Julie spoke about, that aligns with what is already out there in terms of what Education Scotland provides, what we provide within our own local authority, and what we provide through the West Partnership. So I suppose I would say that those discussions are still ongoing at this stage.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. And because it's a concern, I wouldn't want to see all the good stuff that we do lost. In fact, what I want to see is the good stuff that we do shared on a much broader and wider platform, so that every child has that opportunity in every area, if you like. And I think it's making sure that we highlight these successes and the benefits that they bring. So yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor Buchanan. Yep, and we'll all be watching with interest. I think the Centre for Teaching Excellence and the impact that it can potentially have as well in the classroom, in much the same way they used to have with the West Partnership. Just a final question, observation. Hopefully one day, you know, if you are a head teacher, I'd like to think that you talked about it slightly, the support you get from the senior team above you. Do you still feel confident that you'll still have that support? We have a duty of care to you as well when you become a head teacher, that you would still have that professional guidance, even though you've reached that level?
Yes.
I would hope so.
I think that, I suppose maybe when you're not in a leadership position, you see the ELT as these people that are a wee bit distant. I don't know, maybe just, but from my experience recently, I've found that, Mark and Siobhan are in our schools regularly. They know our schools well, and I feel supported. Obviously, because I've got a head teacher that I get lots of support from, I would always reach out to him. But then if I was a head teacher, I know I've got other colleagues that I could ask for support, but I wouldn't be frightened to, contact Siobhan or whoever my link education manager would be, because I think that from my experience of interacting with anyone in the leadership team, they are supportive. They understand the pressures of being in a school. And they want us to do well. They're not looking to catch us out. They're looking to make sure that we are the best that we can be.
Yeah, I would echo what Julie said. We see it as senior leaders in schools. We see the way that we are already supported by the education department, and we welcome that discussion, that professional criticality. We ask Janice to come in regularly and listen to our presentations and comment on what we're doing, and we see that in schools, and there's no reason to think that as aspiring head teachers we wouldn't see that in the future.
Excellent, great. Well, thanks very much. Been great to listen to you and to hear about your journey, and looking forward to seeing how it continues. And I think at this point, we're happy to let you get back to your schools, where I'm sure you actually want to be. But thanks very much for coming and sharing. Okay, thanks everyone. So beyond that, now we go on to our SQA item 4 verbal update from Janice. Thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Convener. Pupils across East Renfrewshire once again delivered outstanding results, achieving excellence across all key performance indicators. The 2025 SQA examination outcomes have continued to shine a spotlight on the remarkable attainment of young people in East Renfrewshire, with this year marking a record-breaking achievement at S4 level. Their success continues to draw well-deserved recognition and celebration. Across the area's 7 secondary schools and Isabel Mayer and William Wood Communication Support Service, the level of success is outstanding, with very strong higher and advanced higher results and a record-breaking performance, as I said, at S4. We are aware that national research has demonstrated the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on learning for pupils, and particularly for those most disadvantaged learners. Committee will be aware that our S5 learners in 24-25 were the year group that did not finish primary 7. They did not have a transition to secondary school, and then they missed a significant part of S1 when schools closed again. It is therefore testament to the dedication and resilience of these learners that we are able to recognise their achievements. The interventions that schools have put in place have added value and ensured that the key measures for the S5 cohort were actually slightly above the similar cohort in 2019, which was pre-pandemic. So as well as the special mention to S4, and S5, we have continued to reduce the poverty-related attainment gap whilst raising the bar for all pupils. These achievements are a tribute to the hard work and commitment of pupils and the collective efforts and support of parents and school staff. We will be providing a more detailed look at the results with our annual presentation focus on performance at the next committee. However, I wish to report a few particular highlights at this stage. 82% of S4 pupils attained 5 or more passes at National 5 or better, the best ever performance and an increase of 6% from 2024. 68% of S5 pupils attained 3 or more passes at higher. 46 of S5 pupils attained 5 or more passes at higher, and 48% of S6 pupils achieved 1 or more passes at advanced higher. Barrhead High and St Luke's High achieved outstanding best ever S4 results, increasing in Barrhead by 32% to 82% and by 24% in St Luke's to 69%. St Ninians and Wood Farm High School saw the proportion of S4 pupils who achieved 5 or more awards at National 5 increased by approximately 6% compared to 2024. Mearns Castle had their best ever results for 1 or more hires with a 9% increase to 96%. William Wood and Wood Farm had their best ever results for the proportion of S6 pupils achieving 1 or more advanced hires, increasing by 5 and 17% respectively. 62% of pupils at Eastwood High achieved 5 or more hires by the end of S6, an increase of 11% since the pandemic. These are just some of this year's highlights. However, it demonstrates that culture of ambition and commitment to continuous improvement across the education department and our schools to aim high and deliver for all our pupils. At next committee, I will provide a fuller presentation looking into detail and in particular at performance of key equity groups. But I would like to express my sincere thanks to all pupils, parents and staff for their vital contributions, and all should be congratulated on the achievements once again of the young people of East Renfrewshire. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Janice. Some very impressive results there. Thanks for delivering that. Obviously, that's a verbal update at the moment. As you said, the next committee will have a very in-depth look at it. Any questions or comments? Councillor Prigle?
It was just a few comments. I think every year we see it as record-breaking results and it just gets better and better. Really delighted to see St Luke's and Barrhead High School performing so well, and massive progress on closing the poverty-related attainment gap. That's what we want, and we continuously raise the bar for all our pupils, and that's excellent, no matter where they come from. I just want to congratulate all our pupils, our parents, carers, our schools, everyone involved in the education department for what is a very difficult time of year. For our young people, it's stressful from S4 to S6. It is a stressful period, and the support they've been given is testament to their results. Also, I want to thank the communications team for the kind of programme they put out on social media. As the results were released, I thought it was excellent that there was a focus on vocational courses as well, and we have seen the update in young people passing them, as well as pupils at Isabel Mayer achieving their national qualifications. So it is fantastic, and I look forward to seeing the in-depth report at the next Education Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Prigle. Fiona?
I just want to say, when I heard all those results, I just wanted to say, wow, those results are amazing. And it's congratulations to everybody, really.
Absolutely, Fiona, absolutely. Gordon, sorry, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you. You mentioned COVID in your presentation, and I think it's all kind of sort of coming out the woodwork now as to perhaps how misguided some of our guidance from on high as to how our schools should be closed at certain times and restrictions put on pupils. And it's been a heck of a negative on youngsters' experience, and no doubt impacted greatly on their learning. But quite clearly now, I think we're beginning to see a bit of fresh air now that we're actually coming out of what was just an absolute hellhole for youngsters trying to learn. Obviously, as ever, the devil will be in the detail, and I'm sure we'll find in due course. But certainly, the headlines are very encouraging, and congratulations to the department for all they've managed to achieve. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Councillor Buchanan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think to echo some of the remarks that have been made about the success that we face, and I think Ben and Julie touched on it initially. We touched on it in the continuous improvement, and we continue to see that, and that in itself is absolutely fantastic. So I very much welcome the initial figures that have come out. I think they look, as always, they look to have been improvements. They look fantastic. Very much welcome the narrowing of the attainment gap, and that in itself is something we've been working towards. So to see those figures and to see all of the process that we've put in place over the years coming to fruition is fantastic. And despite what happened with COVID, when a lot of the decisions were taken in order to save people's lives, the impact has been there, and it impacts on everyone. We know it had impacted on our children and young people, perhaps to some extent greater in terms of that particular cohort. So to see them coming through that and actually managing those results is a credit not only to them, but to our teaching staff and to our parents who have managed to get them to that position. Yes, there were difficulties, but we've managed to get many through that and improve those circumstances. And hopefully when we see all of the figures, we'll be able to look at that. And yes, that will forever have a mark on it, but to see positivity coming from that is, I think, the aspect that we should be looking at. So very much welcome the initial tranche of figures that we've looked at, that have come out, and I look forward to seeing the main picture in what I believe will be, again, significant, not just for East Renfrewshire, but highlight, as we touched on earlier, what we can deliver for everyone and for our children and young people across the country. So, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Buchanan. Yep, I think ultimately that the outcome, the transformational, what it means for the young people and for their future. And I think there's been an immense amount of work to make sure they get every support they needed, and all the hard work that they've put in. They've done exceptionally well. Yep, we'll see obviously the detail when it comes to the next meeting, Janice. Thank you. If there's no more questions or comments, we'll move on to our next item. So we're now on to item 5, which is a progress report on the priorities associated with the National Improvement Framework. And it's yourself again, Janice.
Thank you. And some of the detail for our younger pupils is contained in this paper. The purpose of this paper is to update Education Committee on the Education Department's progress in implementing priorities associated with the National Improvement Framework for Scottish Education. The Scottish Government launched the NIF in January 2016 to drive excellence and equity in education. The refreshed 2025 NIF and Improvement Plan was published in January 2025 and sets out 5 key priorities: placing the human rights and needs of every child and young person at the centre of education, improvement in children and young people's health and well-being, closing the attainment gap between the most and least disadvantaged children and young people, improvement in skills and sustained positive school leaver destinations for all young people, and improvement in attainment, particularly in literacy and numeracy. As detailed in the report, the NIF is underpinned by statutory planning and reporting duties that promote transparency and accountability. These priorities align closely with East Renfrewshire's Local Improvement Plan, our Strategic Equity Plan, the Waste Partnerships Improvement Plan, and individual school pupil equity plans. The Education Department evaluates its progress annually through a robust self-evaluation process, incorporating evidence from the Quality Improvement Team, Education Scotland and the Care Inspectorate. The East Renfrewshire Summary 24-25 draws on performance data, inspection reports and improvement plans to assess progress against the NIF priorities. The appendix, which can be found on page 7 to 33 of your papers, details the progress made and the key themes. Highlights include 38 establishments holding a Rights Respecting Schools Award, with 19 at gold level, a Young Persons' Rights Association that has been established, which is influencing policy and budget decisions. The first Learning for Sustainability Pupil Conference was held, promoting climate action and rights awareness. 100% of establishments evaluating wellbeing indicators as good or better. The Circle framework, which has been fully implemented in primary schools. The stretch aims in literacy and numeracy, showing narrowing gaps between children living in quintile 1 and children living in quintile 5. The pupil equity and the strategic equity funding being used effectively to support targeted interventions. Attainment for disadvantaged learners continue to improve across primary and secondary sectors. 1,735 work-based learning opportunities were delivered, involving 797 employers and 14,737 of our pupils. Attainment remains significantly above national averages, and digital school awards are achieved by all our schools. In conclusion, the Education Department and schools have maintained a relentless focus on raising attainment for all learners while reducing inequalities of outcomes. The Department continues to monitor progress through annual reporting and targeted support. Education Committee is asked to note and comment on the Education Department's progress in implementing priorities associated with the National Improvement Framework. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Janice. I think it's a good paper to also move on to after the verbal update about the results, because it shows you about all the collaboration and partnerships that go on around supporting our young people in schools. That number that struck me there, though, when I looked at you, was the 14,000 placements.
It'll be primary and secondary, I believe, at the February committee. We had Mayor's Primary coming along and showing you, so a lot of our schools. So it's moving away from that traditional work experience being a week and more long periods and throughout the year. So we have people maybe working alongside chefs and in the school setting or in our vocational suites as well. So yeah. I double checked it as well because I thought it was a typo.
Excellent, we're both on the same page there. Yeah. No, it's it's great to obviously give them that experience. Absolutely. Is it sort of put it out to? Is there any other questions or comments from Councillor Buchanan?
Yeah, thanks again, Janice. And I think this report, I mean, all of the reports today could probably be put into one report because they're all intrinsically linked about the outcomes that we want to see for our children and young people. And I think this report gives much of the background of the work that goes in to achieving the outcomes, whether that be what we heard from Ben and Julie from our staff, if you like, in our schools, putting that message down the line and throughout and across their peers, to the results that we've already touched on and we are seeing on a regular basis. Those outcomes are fantastic, but this puts more, I suppose, meat in the bones, if you like, of how we actually get to that stage and what is done behind the scenes to deliver on those outcomes. So again, I think a very good report, and indeed the next one starts to touch on that as well, about how that money is spent. But I think what is great is to highlight that education isn't just about that one aspect of passing the exams. It's looking at our future workforce. It's about giving our children and young people the skill set. And again, that's something that we looked at many years ago, going back to our early learning. If you get children at the right time and you make sure those basics are delivered, then going through from early learning to primary school to secondary school and then into the workforce, that becomes much more of a seamless journey, if you like, if you can get that skill set right at the beginning. And I think this work that's done behind the scenes highlights how we get there. So it's not just a process that you can say introduce 1 year and say we'll get the benefits next year. It's a long-term process. It's throughout that child's, if you like, career at school and journey through education, and that's why we get the outcomes that we look at. So I think, again, an excellent paper highlighting how we get there, and again touches on everything that we've been doing today.
Thank you, Councillor Buchanan. Councillor Bragdon.
I've just got, first of all, this is a great report and it shows the progress we are making. I've just got a few questions. So it's on the Keeping the Promise Award. It mentions in the report that it was hoped that by the August in-service days that all schools will have completed full accreditation. Has this been done? I know our schools do excellent jobs in keeping the promise. Last year I was at the Who Cares Scotland Love Rally, and some of our young people were actually accompanied by their teachers, and it was just a lovely experience for all involved and showed their commitment to those young people. Also in question, on page 8 of the report, mentions that most primary and all secondary schools continue to engage with young carers development work. So where are the gaps, and is it hoped that all educational establishments in East Renfrewshire will have had training on this? And also on page 11 it mentions that a programme, Healthier Minds, had developed a support programme for parents whose children were going through autism diagnosis, and it was a 6-week programme. Are there plans to have similar schemes in the future, and has that network still continued despite the programme ending?
Thank you, Councillor Pragnell. I think Siobhan?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for those questions. I'll start with keeping the promise. We haven't got final figures in yet from the August in-service day, but with conversations we had with head teachers, we are confident that anybody who hadn't completed it last session was finishing off the last part of the training during one of the August in-service days. What we are also now doing is sort of sessions for any new members of staff, because whilst we know that all schools will have sort of taken on board and completed that training, we are aware that there's often a bit of turnover around staff, so we are providing sessions centrally for any new members of staff in order that schools keep up with that aim of every member of staff within a school having completed the training and fully understanding and be committed to keeping the promise within their establishment. So it is very much still a focus within all of our schools, but I can check the figures and get back to you on that one. In terms of young carers development work, that is something that we do still very much have a focus on. We have regular child protection meetings with our child protection coordinators in all of our settings and schools, and it's a regular item on the agenda. We share information, links, event days, etc. with schools, and I suppose in terms of what next or what the piece of work is, it's making sure that families and children and young people are aware of the support and the resource that's there, because sometimes there'll be a young carer and we don't know about it. So it's just keeping that kind of focus high and awareness of it high, so that parents and carers and children and young people know who to approach if they do require that support. In terms of Healthier Minds, yeah, that programme was something we felt there was a bit of a gap in terms of the people who were trained on some of the accredited courses and availability of those, and perhaps waiting lists to get on some of those courses. So we looked at, within the Children's Services Partnership, developing our own bespoke parenting programme that would support parents of children who were either on a waiting list, going through, or recently received a diagnosis. And I think the beauty of that is there is that sustainability. It's our programme. We've got various staff within the Children's Services Partnership who are able to deliver that, including one of our PTs within the Education Department. So yeah, we would be looking to continue that.
Okay, Councillor Pragnell, thanks. Sorry, Councillor Wallace, I think you and Councillor Pragnell put your hand up at the same time there, so it's your turn now, thanks.
Thank you, Convener. Looking at page 19, secondary attainment, East Renfrewshire narrowly missed the overall stretch aim of 96.4% for the proportion of leavers attaining one or more qualifications at level 5 or better, missed it by 0.6%. Can you maybe just... Stretch aims seems to be throughout both these papers here, mentioned quite a bit. Could you maybe explain what we mean by stretch aims and how it fits into our targets? Thanks.
So as an education department, we have been setting attainment targets over a sort of 3 to 4 year period for some time, and the targets for the department are set in partnership with the schools, and their targets for attainment as well as attendance, and the sort of combination of the schools reaching their targets would mean that the department would reach its overall. And it's based on looking at that self-evaluation where the school is currently sitting, looking at different trends and patterns over a period of time, but we err on the side of making them ambitious, because research will tell you that anybody can set an achievable target, but and I think that's part of the reason why we are so successful, that we aim high, so to speak. The Scottish Government, as part of the strategic equity funding, brought in stretch aims, and that's why our targets have moved to 4 years in the department to sort of align with the stretch aims. And they were stretch aims given for particular cohorts of pupils, attendance, primary 147 attainment in primary, and SCQF levels in the secondary, as well as the annual participation measure for young folk who have left school but are they still in employment. So we set stretch aims again based on, we to set an overall stretch aim, but we to set stretch aims for children living in quintile 1 and children living in quintile 5. That's quite challenging for East Renfrewshire because we don't have a lot of children living in quintile 1, but through the process we looked at children living in quintile 2, 3 and 4, because obviously we need to see all of their attainment will impact on that overall. So that's what we mean in terms of we narrowly missed out. It's not like measuring against a national benchmark, it's measuring progress, so to speak, and it's we made significant progress, but we didn't quite make the progress that we wanted to. And I'll explain that a wee bit more, because, for example, we missed out in progress at a primary level by 0.2%. So yes, we didn't hit our target, yes, heads rolled, but we also looked at that progress, because we look at that ambition for our young folk and we look at where they've started and where they've come, and they are definitely making strides, and we can see that through the tables that are in page 17, 18 and 19. Does that answer your...
It does, yes, it does answer the question. It's just, if I'm going to say, we do appreciate getting a few negatives in here, because it's important that we get all the information, and if there are some negatives or some uglies in there, then clearly it's our job to find out how we can help you overcome these if you're needing more resources, etc. So, thank you.
I'll make sure I put some negatives in next month then, Councillor Wallace.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wallace. Janice, Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. Well, here's a wee negative. On page 29, the positive destination has been dropping. Can you tell me why that might be?
I think you can see it dropped last year. It's not been dropping. It's been going up incrementally for a long time. But you can see it dropped by 0.2%.
Mm-hmm. I know, but
yeah, I can. So we look at the amount of who these young people are. We've got in fact, one of the sort of case studies I'm hoping to bring as part of our presentation is about the work we do to ensure no one's left behind in our positive pathways, and that's the teams that work closely with the schools and Work East Rend to make sure our young folk are in a positive destination. We know these children, we know them by names, and for a lot of these children, they are not able to move on to employment. So I would say yes, it dropped last year, but I would argue strongly it's not dropped if you looked at the trajectory over the last few years. I would say that, but even then, it's about those individual children and what's right for them. We are aware that some people have short life training programmes where they can have children in these destinations for the time of the count. We try to make it sustainable, and when there's a follow-up measure, later on in the year. East Renfrewshire comes out highest. That when we get these children and young people in a destination, it tends to stick, it tends to be the right destination for them, and probably because it's all the supports we've got in there to make sure it's sustainable. So yes, it's gone down, you're right, but it's about individual children, and certainly not for the lack of attempt by everyone, including the children, to get it right for them.
Okay, that's great, thanks. And just, this is a trivial pursuit here. What is bucket time training?
Bucket Time is a support that's in place in some of our early learning childcare establishments, and it's been sort of developed and supported through the educational psychology team. It's around early language and also some of the social cues around listening, turn taking, following instructions, but it's all done in a very structured but also fun, interactive way, but it's an approach to support and develop social language communication development.
Okay, right, thanks.
Thanks for that excellent question. Thanks, Councillor Campbell. Sorry, Fiona.
It's just if you could clarify something for me. It's on page 9 in the next steps. It mentions corporate parenting policy. Am I right in thinking that a corporate parent is the new name for a named person?
I'll come in. Yep, so as part of the promise and keeping in the promise, we also have a duty to have a corporate parenting policy, and that's around us as corporate parents, so it's around looked after children and young people, and as corporate parents we would act in their best interests as their own parent would do. So it's not just within the education department, it would be across the council and wider partners, so police, fire, HSCP, housing, everybody has that joint responsibility of being corporate parents to our care experienced children and young people, to ensure that they have the very best outcomes and that they have people advocating for them and wrapping them around with care when their parents maybe are not in the position to be able to do so.
Is there still such a term as a named person?
Yeah, within the Refresh GIRFEC guidance that came out a couple of years ago from the Scottish Government, and we brought a paper, I think, last session around our refresh, that there is a named person. So within early learning and childcare, that would be the health visitor, and then from primary and secondary school, it will be a key member of staff within the school. And again, that's just somebody who will coordinate and offer support and be that sort of link person to communicate with families.
So they're really kind of different. A named person, a corporate parent, they're different. Right, thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. I think that helps actually to get clarity as much as possible so that we understand these different terms and how they may have changed. Thanks for that. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Wallace?
That's a good question. This named person, can you just expand on that, please? What exactly are the responsibilities of a named person? Is that taking duties away from parents, for example?
No, it wouldn't be taking responsibilities or duties away from parents. It would be within, so say within a primary school, it will probably be the member of the leadership team who has responsibility for that year group, and they would just, parents could approach them, child could approach them, they would support with wellbeing planning. If there were social work involvement, they would be the link between the parent and social work. So it's more a supportive role and absolutely not about taking away parenting responsibilities.
So you can just confirm that we've managed to avoid that dystopian paradise that was going to be thrust upon us from the Scottish Government, yes?
I think Janice is going
I
to come
think
in.
you're recalling a paper I brought a good few years ago, and it ended up in the Supreme Court, and it wasn't taken forward nationally.
I think now it's more indicative of that partnership working between the various services and, and looking after our young people and their families potentially. Any other questions or comments? There's a couple of things I was going to mention, and it goes back to those tables in SIMD1 and where they were in 2018-19 and where they are now. And again, the impact that's going to have on those young people when you look at the increase is really, I think, incredible, significant, and very welcome. But there's another thing I was going to ask, because it's the social justice strategy and framework, and I know the framework showing, will that be revised? Because it was quite some time ago that you brought that in. You're the author, really the main architect of it. Will it be potentially, I'm sure you'll reflect on whether or not it's 100% working the way you'd want it to. Do you think you'll be changing it and or revising it in the near future?
So that's a very timely question. There's work undergoing at the moment around, so that in terms of the framework, there won't be a huge amount of changes made to that, but there will be probably some tweaks. The strategy is due to be updated, so we have just started consulting with a range of stakeholders around that. So we've got plans around speaking at the next Parent Council Chairs meeting, the Equalities meeting, and we'll be speaking to pupil councils to gather children and young people's views. So yeah, we will be evaluating the impact of the first iteration of the strategy, and we'll be updating that and bringing a second 3-year strategy to Education Committee in the near future.
Okay, I look forward to seeing that, because obviously you revise it to make sure that it's as much as possible to increase or improve the based on your stakeholders and other people. Great, look forward to seeing that. Well, thanks very much for that, Janice. If there's no more questions or comments, sorry. We'll move back. Sorry, we'll go back on to the agenda, and the final paper is number 6, item 6, progress and impact on the implementation of the Strategic Equity Fund. As Councillor Buchanan referred to earlier, all these papers actually come together quite well, and I believe it's Janice again to take this one. Thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Convener. The purpose of this report is to update Education Committee on how strategic equity funding is improving outcomes for children and young people impacted by poverty in East Renfrewshire, and to seek approval for the updated 1-year strategic equity funding action plan. On the 23rd of November 2021, the former Cabinet Secretary for Education and Skills outlined the Scottish Government's plan for the next phase of the Scottish Attainment Challenge, developed in consultation with local government and agreed by COSLA leaders. Education Committee will recall that at the August 22 meeting, the Department's Strategic Equity Plan was approved, detailing approaches to improving attainment and equity. The Director of Education was asked to bring regular reports to committee on the progress and the impact of its implementation. Similarly, at the November 22 meeting, the committee approved the Department's stretch aims with a request for ongoing reporting. The Education Department, in partnership with schools, has long embedded stretch aims or targets within its quality improvement processes. These aims are aligned with Strategic Council plans, A Place to Grow, our local improvement plan, and individual school improvement plans, ensuring a coherent and ambitious approach to improving outcomes for all learners while closing the poverty-related attainment gap. The Department continually evaluates its progress using evidence from self-evaluation, internal reviews and external evaluations from Education Scotland. The report supplements the Department's Department Standards and Quality Report and the National Improvement Report, which I've just read, and other similar strategic documents. Our SEF plan, Raising the Bar for All, Delivering Excellence Through Equity, is structured under 3 key themes: children and young people's wellbeing, which is that readiness to learn, literacy and numeracy, learning and teaching, focusing on the pedagogy for equity, leadership, parental engagement and the use of research and data to support professional learning, permeates all aspects of this plan. The attached plan on page 39, the attached report on page 39 of your papers outlines the very good progress made during the last session and highlights the impact of activities on pupils and families. Key strengths include a professional learning programme for middle leaders focused on equity and social justice, improved attendance across primary and secondary schools, the positive impact of the LearnWell service on wellbeing, attendance and attainment, our strongest primary 1 attainment in 5 years with a reduced poverty-related attainment gap, our second highest overall primary results in reading, writing, talking and listening, our highest ever numeracy results in primary and in S3, the increased staff confidence and competence in teaching literacy and numeracy, the evidence of our supported school is in making significant progress, the effective use of business intelligence tools to support data-informed decision making, and a wide range of successful cost of the school day initiatives. Our updated plan for 25-26 can be found on page 75. This one-year action plan is informed by our ongoing self-evaluation, and the key activities include to continue to provide support to address the barriers to school attendance, continue to use our 3-tiered support model, supported, guided and independent, to tailor our interventions and our resources to those schools and pupils who need us most, and provide targeted support and professional learning across early years, primary and secondary and special sectors, and to introduce further early intervention programmes for literacy and numeracy. Education Committee is asked to comment on the content of the progress report and approve the updated action plan. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Janice. I'll ask the committee for any questions or comments on the report. Oh, Councillor Wallace.
I dare say I could have asked this question in the previous paper because there's significant link-ups here. Just about this Strathclyde Equity Fund, People Equity Fund, etc., all these various funds, what kind of contingencies do we have in place should this... Well, first of all, what is the outlook for these funds continuing? And secondly, if that is not good, or, I mean, bearing in mind we don't know what the budgets are going to be, there's lots of pressures on, what contingencies are in place to make sure that we can continue doing what we want to do and get the same stretch aims or achieve the stretch aims if that funding is to dry up? Thanks.
So we have had indication that it will be extended for another year beyond the initial, but our strategy from the word go has been about sustainability. We've always viewed this as a short-term resource, very grateful to receive it, but as a short-term resource. So all of our actions and activities about building the capacity of our existing staff groups so that there is a clear exit strategy and that the central resource who are providing that professional learning, who are team teaching alongside, are predominantly teachers. They will go back to school when there's not that central funding, but they will go back measuring that baseline of where our staff were before and dealing with some of these situations where they are now. We would hope there would be increased capacity and competence and to be able to teach and a wide range of interventions.
Thank you, Janice. Councillor Buchanan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll not too much. I think a lot of the comments that they do, the papers are all run into one another. I think what is significant in this paper is this: when you look at the conclusions and you look at the responses, both from Education Scotland about the work that we do in our education department, about the outcomes that we achieve, and indeed not just Education Scotland, but when we look at the parents and carers and their comments about the support that they have received, that the children and young people have received. And when you look at the overall figure, suggesting that 100% of parents and carers agreed or strongly agreed that the service provided by LearnWell had been effective. I think that in itself shows that the work that is done has a significant impact, has positive outcomes, and as you touched on, Janice, is hopefully going to be sustainable as we move forward, no matter what any funding position might be. So, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Buchanan. Any other questions or comments? So, I recognise the elements that are in the plan for the future. Sorry, have you got them there, Janice? In terms of the, it was actually within the report, but literacy and numeracy, there's the well-being. It's yeah. So there's continued work there that's going to happen. That it's going to obviously for the future, for the foreseeable future, as far as we can see, Kimsor Wallace. Obviously, we're going to keep on doing the excellent work that's made such a difference already. Great. All right. Thank you. And the committee's happy to approve the action plan, I believe. Yes. Great. Thank you. Well, that's the last paper, so I think that's to conclude the meeting. Thanks everyone for your attendance and your participation, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.